Hello everyone, I welcome all of you for an introductory webinar session on Life Cycle Assessment LCA. Myself, Saravanan J. Bharati, CAA Certified LCA Professional and One-Click LCA Specialist, Founder and Senior Sustainability Engineer, Carbon Figure Academy. So this webinar is all about this agenda. So we will get to know the introductory part. Then we will jump into the fundamental concepts of life cycle assessment, like definition, stages, and standards to be followed. Then we will be briefly get to know about why LCA is being required. And finally, we will be getting to know about commissioning of a typical LCA project. So this particular part would be from the perspective of a consulting firm. So the changing job market landscape to start with, right? So especially post COVID, we all have been witnessing a dramatic change in whatever the aspect of our every one of our lifestyle. So that includes our job profile as well. So the World Economic Forum has listed fastest growing and declining jobs by the year 2030. So we don't need to worry about the declining ones. So let's focus on the growing ones. So if you just uh, go through one by one, we can understand that the majority of them are like about the core technical and coding and software, AI, ML, all those related aspects. So out of that 15, so we can able to surprisingly witness environmental engineering related professional is being rated at 12th spot, right, out of 15. So it's a good sign. So it has been long time mentioned that there is no scope for core and pure environmental engineers across the globe, especially within the context of developing countries rather than being in a developed country, right? So but still it has reached its own the limelight. So the job profiles in and around fitting with environmental engineering or environmental science related background is going to be fastest one of the growing jobs by the year 2030. The same World Economic Forum has listed once again that the skill sets which are going to be sought out for for various industrial related activities and developments by the year 2030. So you can see some 10 top list of skills that are being becoming crucially important for the sake of employability. So again, the environmental stewardship is being at the spot number 10. So environmental stewardship is in the sense we can able to go to a typical dictionary to understand what is mean by stewardship and environmental stewardship. But in a common sense, we can describe that as a collective set of skills which helps you to understand the relationship between your own operation or activity within the framework of your own business and the surrounding environment. So how you can able to understand that, measure it, mitigate it within the context of your own business activities, that is your environmental stewardship. So it is like environmental engineering and environmental related skill sets are becoming most crucial these days. And right now we are at 2025 and we have a long way to go, and it's a good sign that finally environmental professionals are becoming in demand. So this is one of the major reason why this webinar is being happening. So personally telling or sharing my own experience, so within the environmental engineering context we have a lot of subdivisions starting from impact assessment, water, air, soil, noise related pollutions and abatement methodologies, then environmental awareness, environmental monitoring, environmental modeling. Out of all these things, sir, pure and completely core environmental engineering divisions, but there is not much interdisciplinary feature, all those things. Apart from these core aspects, we can able to see environmental engineering also deals in the major domain of sustainability. So because we all know that the three major pillars of sustainability is nothing but environment, economy, and social, right? So being one among that sustainability pillar, this environmental engineering sprawls with different other domains where we can get our expertise into. So we can say like GHG accounting, sustainability reporting, carbon footprint measurement, eco designing of products, eco labeling schemes, CBAM, LCA, EPD, all those things. So out of all these, personally, I would say LAN and becoming a known person to the concept of LCA is very important among all these things. Yes, because for all of them, measurement of carbon footprint or measurement of environmental footprint is being the fundamental aspect. So LCA should be that fundamental aspect. So for all the aspiring environmental professionals out there, I would say that LCA skill is a very big fish. So let's jump into the life cycle assessment in the section 1. So for anything, we have a history behind, so as that LCA also. So it all started in the year 1969 precisely, or in the late 1960s. Coca-Cola conducted one of the earliest environmental studies by comparing the impacts of glass and plastic bottles. So that was being considered as the oldest one, or might be a popular one associated with the popular brand, might be even before that particular year 1969, or even before 1960s. Some other earliest forms of LCAs might be existing, but to the known level, this is being considered as the one of the oldest LCA that has started, right? So very first time. So there onwards, there has been lot of improvements, adoptions of the same thing by the different players in the market regarding understanding and comparing of their own products in the context of environmental impacts. So by that line, around the year 1990s, the first widely used LCA software, Sima Pro, Gabi, were both released around the later of 1990s. So now you can able to understand so why Sima Pro and Gabi are being considered as the very important and popular LCA tools. So they were the very beginning. They are there since very beginning level, right? So in the year 1997 only, the very first ISO standard for the LCA was published. It was like ISO 14040. So afterwards, in the year 2006, 14044 was published, where we could be able to understand how the LCA should be done, with respect to all their four major phases. So around 2000 2010s, we could be able to see a fast growth of LCA databases and their adoption. So for example, you can say EcoInvent and Gabi. So because of increased use of LCA for various certifications and product eco labeling. So that was the reason behind the growth of the LCA databases. At present, we can able to see LCA as a playing vital role in ESG strategies, carbon neutral initiatives, and circular economy frameworks. Yes, because we are majorly worried about our day-to-day waste generation of various products. So we now very much interested and concerned about recycling the waste into the new product development. So at those particular junctures, we need to understand how the environmental impacts are preserved, and how it can be measured in terms of quantifiable results. So in all those junctures, LCA is the ultimate tool to understand the benefits of recycling, right? So as per ISO 14040, we can understand LCA is like a report card on products and processes, scoring on their environmental impacts throughout their life cycle stages, right? So life cycle stages, whenever it is being mentioned, that this is it, right? So from the, it's like a clockwise rotation. So it starts with raw material extraction, transportation to the manufacturing site, getting produced, then again transportation to the distribution hub, and from that it is entering into the usage phase. So depending on the product, the life cycle, the life time, that service life will be there, starting from 1 year to 50 years. If it is a building, it would be 50 to 60 years. If it is a small like eatable or food related product, then it might be 1 year, right? So afterwards it goes to the disposal phase or end of life phase, right? So considering all these phases to be included in the life cycle assessment, so that we can able to quantify the impact of that particular product throughout its life cycle onto the surrounding environment, right? So that is your life cycle assessment. So what are the stages are there? Typically guided by ISO 14040. So popularly known as four major phases are there in LCA. So what are they? So goal and scope definition, inventory analysis, impact assessment, and final interpretation. So it is like, if you just note down that flow, the interpretation goes across all the previous three phases. So here what you should understand is, even though we have listed first goal and scope definition, then inventory analysis, then impact assessment, so it should be, it won't be the same while you apply it, right? So it would be like each and every phase is highly interconnected with the other three phases, and accordingly much more number of times you may need to revise it, right? So initially if you establish a goal and scope for your LCA study, but when you apply your impact assessment and understanding the results, you may would like to revise the goal and scope. The same way, once you start preparing or building your inventory, there you may understand some important issues with respect to the previously defined goal and scopes. So it is like, in the interpretation phase, you are just refining every other phases with respect to the consistency between goal and scope definition and inventory analysis and impact assessment. So accordingly you just re-ensure that everything is in consistency. So accordingly you go for the final results production, in the form of a report, and you try to utilize that report for the various other applications, right? So how and all this LCA report can be used? It can be used for product development and improvement, strategic planning, portfolio assessment, organizational footprint, capacity building, and other related activities, right? So these are the major four stages of LCA: goal and scope definition, life cycle inventory analysis, then life cycle impact assessment, then life cycle interpretation, right? So we can simply understand what is happening under each phase. So under goal and scope definition, we would decide upon what we need to study, why we need to study, and setting the boundary conditions to define what parts of the life cycle is to be included or to be excluded. Like what, why, and how, all these to be all these questions to be answered under goal and scope definition. And obviously under scope, you would need to mention all the limitations and assumptions you make for the LCA study. So under the inventory analysis, life cycle inventory analysis, we would collect the data on all the inputs and outputs within the defined boundary conditions in aligning with the established functional unit, right? So data about what? It's like material input output, energy and emissions output, and waste output. So if you want to simply make a equation, what are the inputs, what are the outputs? Inputs, materials, energy, sometimes water. Output, a product. Waste, waste might be solid waste or liquid waste, and air emissions as a output, right? So these are the various aspects of data to be collected for your LCA study, right? So once you build the inventory of your product or process, you just need to apply a specific impact assessment method and try to understand the impact results, right? So it's all about analyzing how those inputs and outputs within the boundary conditions affect the environment, like climate change or any other impact category. So based on the choice of impact assessment you make, the final impact categories would like to change accordingly, right? And sometimes based on a specific product sector or product category, you may need to choose your impact assessment method accordingly. Sometimes based on the geographical conditions also, you may need to revise the choice of impact assessment method. So in the final phase, we have the interpretation, where the results are getting interpreted based on different stakeholders or different audience. Like if your intended audience is your super boss, the interpretation should be made accordingly. Super boss in the sense, officially might be in a superior role. For example, I would like to state here, in the country United States, recently a new president took charge. Like I hope we can name them Trump, right? So before him there was Joe Biden, right? So he was supporting paper straws over plastic straws, right? Obviously, everybody knows that once Trump took charge, he just revised that order, that everyone can simply continue using plastic straws. So that is not our scope of discussion, but you just go back in the timeline and you just get to the moment where Joe Biden wants to understand um the choice between paper straws over plastic straws. So what their scientific team or technical team might have done, they might have done LCA, and they interpreted the results so as that Joe Biden can able to understand in a more simplified format. So the same LCA report can be interpreted differently based on who is going to hear or read your results. For example, a same example and the same LCA results would have been looking different for a paper straw productions unit and plastic straw manufacturers, right? So Joe Biden is not so technically uh, you know not need to be technically relevant for the LCA, but he is in the charge of implementing some big policies. So interpretation is like who is your audience, accordingly it would read it, right? So what are the standards are there, majorly for conducting life cycle assessment? So as this, simple funny picture illustrates, so earlier, uh, from the year of 1997, that announcement of ISO 14040 till 2024, there were only two major standards was there, were there for conducting LCA. It was ISO 14040 and ISO 14044. So in the year 2024, ISO launched three major new standards, to the support of life cycle assessment. They are 14071, 14072, and 14075. So apart from these major standards, there are other allied standards are also there, which has that LCA framework as the fundamental aspect, like ISO 14067, carbon footprint of products, ISO 14064 part 1, 2, 3, measurement of GHG emissions from an organizational operations. But still, for the very core of LCA purposes, those two were the long term available standards from the ISO, but these three were introduced newly in the last year, right? So apart from these things, additionally couple of standards were there. So seven major standards we can list out as the required ISO standards for LCA. So the very first one, ISO 14040, again clockwise. It is life cycle assessment principles and framework. So it's like only talking about what are all the framework of conducting a typical LCA. Right? What are the phases? What are they, like that? Very simple and straightforward. So the second standard is ISO 14044 2006. So that standard, like declares or dictates the complete requirements and guidelines for conducting an LCA. So whereas 14040 only talks about what is the framework of LCA, 14044 completely deals about how it is to be done, how it is to be performed. For example, let us take goal and scope definition as the first phase of LCA. So 14044 would be detailed explanations about what a goal statement should look like, what it should include, what a scope statement should look like, and what are all the aspects should get included under the scope statement. So likewise, each and every step regarding the four phases, including data quality requirements, additional requirements, reporting, review guidelines, internal, external, everything would be there in ISO 14044. So if you are a very beginner in the context of LCA, it is highly suggested to read 14040, right? If you are going to apply LCA for any of your activities, like you may be a student, undergraduate level or postgraduate level or PhD level, you may be a consultant, you may be working in a company, in LCA team, then you should really read on that 14044, right? So that is the basic the thing, right? So typically there would be some major courses on LCA which are being provided by big names in the industry like TUV, SGS, all those people. And apart from them, several other course providers, training providers are also there in Indian market. So what they would typically do in those training, they would teach these two ISO standard and related topics only. So it is like ISO 14040, it's like a 15-page content. 14044, we can have some 30 to 40 pages. That's all. So altogether some 50 plus pages, and that 50 plus pages contents only will be taught in those typical 2 days 2 complete days, like 8 hours training on LCA, right? So that is what you should understand. Apart from these fundamental two the standards, we have other supporting standards like data documentation format, and some showing some typical examples of how that 14044 can be implemented. So those and all are like ISO TS 14048 and ISO TR 14047. So these four are there. So the last year, the last three new additions were introduced. ISO 14071, which is talking about critical review processes and reviewer competencies for LCA. So earlier the review was there, but still there was no ISO based guidelines on, or detailed guidelines on how that has to be conducted and who can conduct it, because that is very important. As you know the SDG global net zero targets are getting started since last couple of years or last 5 years, we can say. So people started understanding LCA is being used more often than ever before. So we should come up with that competencies requirement for the LCA consultant and LCA practitioners. So that is what being given in 14071 under critical review process and reviewer competencies. So the next sixth standard is ISO 14072, which deals about organizational level LCA. So that is not into our scope, but still it is emerging, just like ISO 14064 part 1, 2 and 3. So there are like OLCA is also there. So I am really not aware about what it deals, but still it is to be mentioned as an important ISO standard, right? I request all of you to just go through some Google searches on what is mean by OLCA, right? Then finally we have ISO 14075 social life cycle assessment, so which I might know something about it. So it is like, we all know that sustainability has a three pillars: environment, economic and social, right? So the LCA life cycle assessment, it's is actually purely focusing on the environmental aspect of sustainability. Now another concept is their life cycle costing, LCC, that is especially focusing on economic aspect of the sustainability. Similarly, that social life cycle assessment, SLCA, focusing on the social aspect of the sustainability, right? So it is like, if you want to conduct a complete sustainability study, you just need to perform three different life cycle concepts. One is life cycle analysis, LCA. Another one is life cycle costing, LCC. And third one is social LCA, that is SLCA. So in social LCA, typically what would be there, just like how a product is made with lot of inputs and outputs and respective environmental impacts are there. Similarly, how a different metrics about the people involved in the product manufacturing and how they are getting affected because of that product manufacturing, from raw material extraction till its disposal, right? So it is focusing only on humans and their related parameters. So it is not that becoming popular now, only people started understanding environmental aspect, but eventually there are a lot of social LCA experts are there, but still it is not becoming so mandatory in reporting any of like sustainability standards or reporting requirements. So it is not yet picking up its face, but eventually it will pick it up, right? So finally, we would know why this LCA is important. So far I hope you would understand, what is LCA in a very preliminary sense. Now we should understand why we should need to perform the LCAs, right? So the very first reason is eco-labeling schemes type 1 and 2 and 3, right? So it is like, just assume if you are a product manufacturer. So product manufacturer in a typical region, for example, let's take India, and the product is furniture, right? So if you are a furniture producer or manufacturer and you want to sell your product across India, that's fine. So over the time, what the customers and the different stakeholders are expecting is, so how green is your product? Is your product green? Yeah, or is there any certification you have for, for calling your product as a green product? So there comes the eco-labeling concept type 1, right? So in Indian context, we have Green Pro and Griha, right? So they have their own derived criteria to be met, and by applying to their organization, you just demonstrate how your product meets up with their listed criteria and get certified. So for doing that, you just need to start with the LCA of your product, right? So, but still, I can say that under Green Pro, the LCA is still in optional list, not mandatory list. But in Griha, LCA is in mandatory list. So soon, we can expect that Green Pro also would mandate the LCA, right? So it is like, do the LCA, get the results, get your product green certified, and spend some time in your domestic market. So now, as a market, like as a furniture manufacturer, you would like to expand your market and you would like to export your product to the other countries. So now you may, for example, let us assume that from India you want to export your furniture products to the European Union. European Union consists of some 25 plus countries. I'm not sure how many number exactly it is. And you want to also export your product, a furniture product, to the American continent also, North America and Canada and the related regions as well. So now they will ask, okay, you are selling your product in our country. We have certain legislations that whatever the product is getting imported into our country, that should possess some green related rating. So what is your carbon footprint or environmental footprint of your product? So now you can think like, sir, we have Green Pro and other things. So what they will say is, no, that and all are your own regional labeling. We need some international labeling. So there comes the eco labeling type 3, environmental product declaration. So environmental product declaration is nothing but declaring your product's complete environmental impacts across its life cycle, right? So based on certain guidelines and rules and regulations provided by the EPD program operators, right? So now if you have the EPD, which is again keeping that LC as the fundamental aspect, and you can show it to their different countries where you want to export your product. So now they would understand, okay, this product carbon footprint and load of carbon is this much. Okay, now you can sell your product in our market, like that. So it is ultimately, we can understand that for a local good competitive advantage, you should get LCA done, then you should get eco-labeling 1 or 2 based on your regional requirements. Then when you want to expand your market into a global level, then you have to go for eco labeling 3. Again, LCA would be the fundamental aspect. So this is why LCA is important in the context of eco labeling schemes. Then we have another reason, eco design of products. So what is mean by eco design? It implies that act of designing products by integrating LCA in the design development process to mitigate the ecological damages so as to prefer the environment over the others. So just to understand, we have a couple of examples here. So it is like in the left side we have a demonstration that LCA of an existing product. So the product has been made, right, manufactured. Now we want to understand what is the impact of that product, right, onto the environment. We can't change the product because it is completed and produced, it is already in the market, right? So now you do the LCA and get the insights like this, right? So it is like, what are the different material compositions and their impacts, metals, plastics, electronics. This is the manufacturing contribution and transportation contribution. So you can understand my product's environmental footprint is 7.2 kg CO2 equivalent. It is like GWP, global warming potential, right? So this is for already produced product. Now, if you want to integrate your LCA even before the production stage and especially into the design stage, right? This is how it would look like. So we have different design options of our same product, the earbuds, and now we can understand for each shape, for each type, what is the environmental footprint, concept. 6.2, it is getting reduced further, and with the change further, the impact also reduced further, right? So this is what an eco design would look like, where the LCA is integrated into the design stage of product, right? That is called your eco design. So this is also why LCA is required and respective knowledge is required, right? So we have another reason like called ESG reporting. So nowadays, corporations, businesses have to report their activities under various national and international, sustainability reporting frameworks. So how LCA contribute or can support in that sustainability reporting activities? So under social head, the LCA evaluates environmental impacts of sourcing and production. So how that supply chain activities can be done there. Then stakeholder trust. So your LCA result, genuine, honest LCA results can build credibility by showcasing sustainability commitments. Like it's not going to be one-time activity. Like in the year 2024, this is how our environmental impact was, and by understanding the hotspots of different areas and we improved our activities and manufacturing strategies. So now in the year 2025, this is our environmental footprint. So by simply seeing the last 2 year value and this year value, we have drastically reduced this much amount of percentage of our impact on the environment. So that is how you can showcase the LCA of your products over the timeline, right? So that can attract your stakeholder trust. Then under environment, obviously impact measurement, decarbonization strategies can be built, and a circular economy idea also can be implemented. So when your product can be manufactured using certain portion of recycled content, right? So under the governance, again, your LCA can help in becoming compliant for different frameworks like CSRD and BRSR in Indian context. So data driven decisions, it helps, it provides robust insights for sustainable governance, right? So this is how and why LCA is required under various concepts. And finally, CBAM. So I just wanted to add this. I'm not aware about the complete concepts of CBAM and its requirement, but still I can briefly let you know what it does mean, right, preliminarily. So CBAM, carbon border adjustment mechanism, it is actually put up by the European Union onto the global countries. So when other countries out of the EU countries would like to export something into the EU countries, then the EU is asking you how much carbon load you are importing into our country. For example, from India, we want to export furniture products into one of the European Union countries. For example, let us assume 1 ton weight of one particular type of furniture you want to export, right? So from their perspective, what they are seeing, you are importing some 1 ton of products into our country. It is not only 1 ton of product, it also possesses some amount of carbon footprint also. So now you tell me how much carbon footprint this 1 ton of your product holds, so that accordingly I would put you some tax on that, right? So what ultimately I want you to do is, you get to know about the carbon loading of your product first. If you want to still import into our country, you pay the tax accordingly. If you, for example, 1 ton of furniture product has some 500 kg of CO2 equivalent, for example, I'm telling, this is this much amount of euros you have to additionally pay to us, apart from other export import duty fees, right? So what it ultimately pushes the manufacturers is getting to know their own products carbon loading, and developing the mitigating strategies for the carbon footprint, so that eventually they would like to reduce the tax they would need to pay to the EU countries, while they would like to just export to their export their products, right? So this is the concept of CBAM. So currently it is applies to the products like major polluters like cement, steel, aluminum, fertilizers and electricity. So eventually they have the plans to add more and more product portfolios into the concept of CBAM. So for all these reasons, we need LCA to be done, right? So finally, we have that section commissioning of an LCA project. So this is how it would look like. We can have an example of a brick LCA as example here, and this is how it has to be dealt from a consulting point of view. So you just start with kickoff meeting, you do scope definition, you do data collection, then LCA modeling, then review meeting, finalizing the LCA report, presentation of the results, and proposing counter actions, right? So why this dotted arrows back and forth are there? They are indicating that iterative process between this stage and this stage and this stage, right? It is not like one single simple event, one time event, no. So based on some other additional inputs, it would be undergoing some iterative changes. So very first kickoff meeting, so it just discuss with the brick manufacturing organization for specific types of bricks produced and the production processes involved, right? So you just get to know the idea of the product and how it is getting manufactured. So under scope definition, you try to define the scope of the LCA study, such as whether it will follow a cradle to grave approach or cradle to gate or gate to gate, so which includes raw material extraction, production, use and disposal. So what is to be done, that has to be decided. Then data collection. So gather data on raw materials like clay, water, additives, energy consumption during the production, then emissions from the firing process, because everybody knows clay bricks emits a lot, right? And and the transportation related data. So this step typically takes 2 to 3 months. Then whatever the data related, right? Then do the LCA model. It may take 2 to 4 weeks. Then you go for the review and get to understand the impacts and finalizing the report and the results presentation, right? So finally you prepare and produce